Great. Thank you so much for making the time to be on the show.
Thank you, Kathy. Thank you for having me. I'm thrilled to be here. This is very exciting.
Everything you do is just so damn beautiful that it's ridiculous. It's totally ridiculous, and you're one of those people that people love to get to know and study because I don't know how you've done this, but you are so lovable, and to be as talented and fancy as you are, but not be pretentious is such a legacy for you.
Aw.
So tell us more about the man, the myth, the legend. How did you get to do this? Like, I know that you had a corporate job in your 20s and then you set yourself free. How did all of that go down?
Well, all started in high school. I took dark a dark room photography class my junior year, and instantly was sort of obsessed with developing my images in the dark room. And I nerded out. I became a photography little art nerd, and I went off to college to become a young, who knows what, like I wanted to just do something. I didn't know what it would be, but I studied marketing and I minored in photography. And I landed this epic internship for Paramount Pictures, took me to LA. I got my first job working for the president of the studio. It was a dream job for many people. And then the recession hit, was 2008, and I had this sort of moment where I thought, everyone who I'm working with is so passionate about their job. Um, I am not that passionate about film. I got here via marketing, but I really love photography. And it drove me during this time period where everyone was really sort of struggling, um, to take a step back. And I went to my family and I said, "Hey, you guys, I know you think I'm just crushing it at Paramount, but I'm actually miserable, and I think I want to leave, and I think I want to follow my heart and try to become a photographer." And that was sort of the biggest step I think I've ever had to take as a human being, was just admitting that and literally, as they say, jumping off a cliff. So
Wow. I
um,
want to hold that moment for a second. I want to hold that moment for a second because isn't it amazing how we have this thing called an intuition,
yes,
and the amount of resistance and the amount of suffering that we put ourselves through until we finally take the path of least resistance, which is listening to ourselves, and it sets our whole life free. And everyone who is listening knows that feeling. So I really wanted to like stop and punctuate it because to do what you just said you did, it's the
yeah,
ultimate gift you give yourself, and it's like the portal, the door to this mystical better life. It is right here, and yet it feels like the hardest, heaviest door. So how did that actually happen? Like what gave you enough oomph that you were going to be willing to actually do what you just said you did?
I think deep down I felt I would never fully be, maybe pleased with myself if I didn't give photography a chance. And
Mhm.
I was so young. I think I was 21. I mean, I forget when you graduate college, what age you are, but 20, 21, 22, I thought, oh, I don't have that much responsibility right now. I don't have that much. I have my rent, I've got my car payment, I've got X, Y, and Z payment, but I don't have a ton to worry about. I can go and try this. I don't need to be afraid of this. If there's a time to do it, I felt like at that point, I was like, this is now. You're right, that intuition, that intuitive inner voice was speaking, and I was listening, and I was like, this is it. I'm gonna give it a shot. And if it doesn't work, I can literally go back and get another job in the entertainment world. I clearly had a wonderful start. And I think for me, what's interesting about my story was in 2008 and 2009, the art gallery world was just suffering. Galleries were closing left and right with the recession. People were not, changing their spending habits. And I was taught that I needed to find a gallery to represent me, but I couldn't do that. It didn't work out. So I went to where I knew I could do something myself without having to rely on anyone else. And that was a very small flea market in West Hollywood. That's every Sunday. It's somewhere I went before I started to become a photographer. And I walked through and I thought, wow, there are no photographers selling their work. Like, this is so interesting. There's just some artists in here. And that for me was the light bulb where I thought I could sell my work here. And then it was also the courage to my peers and my friends, hey, you guys, I actually am going to start selling my work in a flea market. And not being afraid of that and thinking this is my own I literally, I'm doing it for myself, and I don't really care what, judgment I might get. And do you think my parents were thrilled about this? No, they were like, our son is crazy. He left this big job and now he's selling his fine art photography in a flea market. Um, and lo and behold, I met the people every Sunday. I met new people. I got feedback, and it led me to this one young woman who came in my booth and she asked me if I ever thought about selling my work online. And 10 years ago, let me tell you, none of us were buying a lot of things online, let alone artwork. So it was a truly kind of shocking idea to me. And it is where I got, thanks to the flea market, thanks to this young woman, thanks, the fact that I put myself out there, I was able to move into the online space rather quickly. But it wouldn't have happened if I hadn't have done those steps. I think it's really important for those listening that when you have an idea, you've really got to go for it. You can't sit there and think it's going to come to you. I had to really go to an uncomfortable space, face some, critique from friends and family, but it's what set me free, and is what gave me the channel that I still am on, which is, I've launched this whole world online, and I did it at a time when people weren't doing it. I got there first, thanks to what I what I just explained.
It's phenomenal. And you just said the word courage. Often we talk to listeners. We now have like 23 million downloads, Gray, because everyone wants to quit their freaking job. And so they write into me about what they're doing and they tell me that they have a business problem. And I say, it's not a business problem, it's a courage problem. And what you just said, you were disproportionately rewarded for that sentence when you said, and you can't just sit there, you have to just do this thing. If you feel it, you have to just do it.
Yeah.
How many people have had a thought like that or heard an idea that something lit them up about it, but then there's all the overthinking, there's all the imposter syndrome, and they just don't do anything. And here you were, you're like, courage. It's called courage, right?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so tell this, I love this story so much. And who you are is just like what's really shining through it, because you keep coming back to, and then I had to reflect in myself, and you keep saying, and I had to deal with some pushback from friends and like, that is so beautiful, because that's the parallel piece of the business piece, is you keep reflecting on that, and then somehow you have the strength to say, and then I just kept going anyway. which
Yes.
says a lot about who you are. And I have a feeling just from the 2 minute conversation we had before we jumped on, and you said you had kids and you're married and you have this home, you're making a lot of very big grown up decisions that I can already tell you've had to have this as a lifeline, listening to yourself, trusting yourself to make these decisions. That's part of just everything you do, isn't it?
It is. And I also think when I listen to other stories of how people started companies and so forth, so much of it is it's listening. You have an idea, but it's listening to the feedback that you're receiving about what you're trying to do. And for me, I went to that flea market and hung new work, and I got direct feedback. And from that, I realized that people were looking for artwork that made them feel great, made them feel joyful. It brought them somewhere happy. And I thought, wow, in studying photography in school, it wasn't about joy and humor. It was a little bit more about sort of a little more serious. So it helped me navigate by listening after I put myself out there, by listening to the feedback. It helped me create the lifestyle that I am, where I am today. But it made me dedicate kind of myself to a brand. Sorry, not a brand, but a motto, which I still have today, and it's make every day a getaway. And I thought, if I want to be a photographer, I don't want to do weddings, I don't want to do portraits, I don't want to do, you know, there's a lot of facets. I want to make fine art, and I want to make fine art that takes people somewhere joyful. And
Mm.
that I decided that back in the flea market, and have, stuck to it to this moment right now while we're recording this. And I think that listening is so important. But you have to ultimately be the one who's like fearless, and never, people will, oh my god, if I people in the flea market, for every good thing I heard, I also heard not great things. But
I
it's
w-
just, yeah, it's part of the journey.
I want to put everything you just said in neon lights because I hear this so often that as soon as someone thinks about taking a passion and turning it into a profit, they feel like, well, I'm going to have to sell out because I'm going to have to then all of a sudden understand what the market wants. And what you just said was that was such a gift. It was a gifting to hear that traditionally what makes someone an artiste is doing something dark and morose, and yet there were human beings who needed to feel good, and I heard that. And that's also, again, to me, a sense of your courage, because for some reason that is not typically what is praised in the artistic world, is stuff that feels good, and you did that, and it is so gorgeous, and I love that motto, and every piece of yours I've seen, that is how it feels. It is a feeling of jumping into the sidewalk, right, and going somewhere else.
Yeah, I always thought my first big series, I'm from Dallas, Texas originally, and my family growing up, my parents, they love this teeny town in West Texas called Marfa, and no one had heard of it 10 years ago. And now it's like quite well known. But I shot this series out there with the help of literally my cousin, my dad, my mom, some cowboys, some people from the town. And what was interesting was that people didn't believe that there was this Prada art installation in on the side of the highway in Texas. And I was like, wow. I sat in the flea market telling people that it was real. And I thought, this is so fun. I love that I can take or create images that people think are photoshopped. I was like, it's great. It's conversation. It's something you could hang in your house, and your friend would walk in and be like, whoa, Kathy, like, what is this? Like, where did you get this? And I think it ignited this idea that if you can make work that starts conversation, that makes people happy, that brings people together, then you are definitely on the right path. And I think it went from there to, um, it went to a fateful day. I found myself in Miami trying to get a picture of a swimming pool, and I couldn't get access to the right spot to take the picture. So I Googled helicopter, comma, Miami, and ended up accidentally for the first time in my life in a helicopter shooting above the beaches of Miami. And it spawned like a worldwide journey for me to go and capture and document the most beautiful beaches I could possibly get to, from a doorless, windy, crazy helicopter ride. And people loved it. It was like this, it was before drones, it was before sort of this, it was a time when people hadn't seen that perspective. And I thought, wow, like photography is so powerful. I mean, everyone seemed to be able to relate to that aerial beach, because almost everyone out there knows what a beach is or has been to a beach, and or aspires to go to a beach. And it's interesting how kind of powerful photography became in this range of joy and uplifting others, and staying in this sort of this brand motto that I have of make every day a getaway. um, and it's been 10 years of just like, it's been such a wild ride. um,
It's amazing. I love the synchronicity of you're trying to get this angle and you can't, so you Google helicopter, comma, Miami, which literally was the Hansel and Gretel breadcrumb of your life, which led you to something that it came to you. Like it just literally came right to you. And that's what people listening, I want them to hear, is that everybody's willing to start down the path as long as they see the ending or the master plan. They want the certainty, when at the same time, everybody wishes for something magical. But the magic is only going to come when you're willing to let go of certainty. And then you didn't know when you woke up that morning that you'd wind up in a helicopter that day. And then there you were doing it over and over and over again. And it like started a whole new quantum level of your business.
yeah, it's interesting. That story is such a good one, and I'll tell it quickly. But the I went to Miami because I had a photograph I had taken of a swimming pool from above, um, as my computer screensaver. And I looked at it every day and I thought, God, this image is so like, makes me want to go to the pool and jump in. It's just so like fun. And then one day looking at it, I thought I should shoot more pools. I should get up and try to shoot more pools from like a hotel balcony. And then I was there in Miami. They wouldn't let me up on the roof, of course. I don't know what I was thinking. Got in the helicopter. A rainstorm, like a little rain cell, came off the Atlantic over Miami. And when I got to this pool, the helicopter, it was all gray and cloudy. And I looked down and I was like, there's no one there. It's, God, this isn't meant to be for me. And in that minute, I lowered my camera down from my face. And that's when I looked up at the horizon and saw the beach. I could see this wide white sand of South Beach. And I said to the pilot, do you mind if we quickly just fly over the beach? I'd love to see it. And I had no idea it was going to be there. I mean, it just rained, but that's where I saw the umbrellas, the chaise lounge chairs, the repetition, the symmetry, the kind of canvas that the beach was. And it was in this moment of total defeat that I looked up and saw what would become this huge part of my career. So it's like, for those out there, even when you're on the path of trying to do what you love and make a business, you can't really, you have to keep going. You can't give up, and you never know what you'll see if you just keep your eyes open. And I guess that's really what I want everyone to hear. I definitely had no idea I was going to stumble onto that beach that day. It was totally uh, an amazing moment. And you're right, I didn't wake up that morning and think I was gonna get in a helicopter, yet alone see that beach.
I
So
mean, that is a story I'm going to retell 1,000 times. It is so mesmerizing. And it's like that Rumi quote, what you seek is seeking you. Like,
yeah,
yeah, correct. Like, you had no idea that was coming, but when you are available to see the clues, like, I use the analogy, which is a camera analogy a lot, of like open the aperture, like look, right? Because a lot of times the camera sees more than we see, right? We see through our like bias, we see through what we look for the evidence of, but a camera takes the actual picture of like what's there. And when you as a person are willing to keep seeing, like you said, I looked up, right? I looked up, and there's a part of you, and that's inherent in who you are, that just keeps being sort of the little dots that connect to the next lily pad, is like, but wait, there must be another clue. It's like,
you
and there it was.
exactly. And I think once that project got underway, I went from Miami to Hawaii to, I literally went everywhere I could as fast as I possibly could and put them online for sale. And people, the response was tremendous. It, that's when I sort of started to get the funding to be able to, I thought, what other crazy ideas do you have? What other kind of wild, joyful projects can you make? And it led me to Antarctica, where
Oh my
I
God.
floated uh, pool floats out against the icebergs and put umbrellas up on the like icy tundra and photographed trying to like say something about the beach, but also global warming. And it led me to Australia, where I found a sheep farmer, a third generation sheep farmer, who let me literally dye his sheep with a vegetable rinsable dye and shoot them in a field where I was trying to make art about individuality and like not everyone being a white sheep, but standing out from the crowd. And like the projects were all so fun. And then there was this moment where I went to Bolivia and worked on a project in this largest salt flat in the world. It's roughly the size of Connecticut. If you can imagine Connecticut completely covered in salt, looks like you're on Mars. And I was like, are there any animals that live out here? It'd be really fun if we could maybe work with an animal. And they're like, yeah, we actually have llamas. And I was like, oh, llama. I was like, I forgot what they look like. And sure enough, we have some llamas come out. We end up draping these balloons on their back, got this photograph. And I mean, I had no idea llamas were going to become like this. Literally, when I go to a kids store for my kids right now, it's like there's a whole llama section. Everything
Correct.
is llama.
Correct.
But it was just this journey, and that was what was available. And I had no idea. I just had no idea what I was really doing. And I think that's important as well, because I was just trying to make art and I was hoping people would love it. And sometimes you just have to listen to yourself and keep going. The sheep from Australia never did great, but the llamas, like, that, it's the cover of my 10-year monograph book that recently came out. And that was a shot from early on in my career, like 2013, maybe 7 or 8 years ago. But it's funny, I also shot mylar balloons. I started shooting mylar balloons. Like, I thought they were so funny to write. I went to Joshua Tree and I put, by the way, I don't use helium. We inflate them, and then there's a piece of tape that we run across and then stick the balloons on. Otherwise, I tried once inflating them. It's a nightmare. They blow everywhere. But we tried to spell the word dessert in the desert, like these funny ideas. And then we end up shooting the word I am busy above the water in the Caribbean. And like it just became such a pop culture sort of photograph. And Mylar balloons are now at every single, it's like every birthday party, every time someone turns 25 or 30, everyone's got the balloons. It's like they couldn't be more popular. It's so funny how things just like unfold over time. And I'm just so grateful that I went around the world with Mylar balloons in my bag, everywhere I went, shooting them, because it's just you trying to do your own kind of your own thing.
You know, it's so fun. It's just like being in a candy factory to listen to you talk because you are so willing to let go of control. And I'm sure that you're going to say, well, you should listen to my husband or my staff or whoever. Like I know there's moments where you probably are very much in control, but the whimsy of just letting it take you on a ride, right? That is like true divine inspiration. It's so fun. And most people are just not willing to let it take them. And so it's really fun to listen to you be like, yeah. And then I just thought, let's do this. So then we did, and we didn't know what would happen. We didn't know what would happen. Like you keep saying that we didn't know what would happen. And we did it anyway, because it just
yeah,
felt like fun. And that's such a gorgeous example to give your kids, right? Is like that's how you're living your life. Um,
yeah.
so wow. And then you've done so many things. Like you said, like the things that you've done have become like iconic and then people get inspired by them. And then you made this app recently. Tell us about that. What was that whole journey about?
I think when you hit like a decade in business, I mean, people always ask you what's next, like what's the next decade look like, and you're kind of like, oh, just like I've been sprinting for a decade, but sure, let's talk about the next decade. And for a while I talked to like my close friends, and I always kept telling people I really think that the art world and digital technology are going to merge, and that we're going to just, I mean, if you think about even myself going from a physical flea market to launching online and creating a direct to consumer business model, it's all digital, right? And then you start to think about um, basically how are we going to experience art in the future? And there's just a no, it kind of 2 years ago, it was like a no-brainer to me. I was like, we should start to work on a really affordable way for people to display art in their homes. And it literally drives me bonkers that we have this television that when it's off, it's just this blank black screen. And I always think it should be a piece of art. And yes, like Apple and televisions come with these screensavers, but no one is really using them yet. And I think with COVID and what's happened recently, everybody really wants their home and their environment to feel uplifting and joyful and so forth. So we thought, let's really dive in and do this. So we built an app. It's available for anyone who has an Apple TV at this time. And you can download it just like you would type in Netflix. Like if you were on your Apple TV, you type in Netflix, you type in Gray Malin. It's free and it comes with a couple free images. But basically, it's like a curated way to experience art in your living room or wherever you have your television in your house, if most people still have televisions, I think, where you can change up art seasonally. You can change it up literally every hour. It can change. You can buy one image and just have that one image on display every time your television turns off. have it come up. And I just,
Beautiful.
yeah, I just feel like the future of displaying art will be digital.
Yeah.
Um, People will definitely still have artwork in their homes. There's no doubt about it. But so we recently launched that, and it's interesting. I've done so many things over the years with products and like sort of, what I realized early on was that a lot of people felt like the art world was too exclusive. And even myself, I remember going into galleries, the the person working there sort of looks at you up and down and just ignores you. Like, very uninvited. Like, I didn't feel like it was very inclusive. So I wanted to make a world where people felt really included. So that's why I launched graymalin.com originally. You can sit in your pajamas at home and come in and scroll around the world, and you're a part of it. You're totally invited on this journey with me. And I think over the years I realized that it's still artwork's still expensive. So how can we make this more accessible for people? So we launched things like double-sided puzzles and iPhone cases, and we've had wonderful collaborations where you can buy into the brand idea and the photography. And that's the beauty of books too. Like, I've got 6 books. They are, much more affordable than the art. And the app to me was the ultimate. I think that art in general moving forward should be more affordable for people. And the digital space is a great way to offer that. And it just goes back to the very beginning of like, how can I make the art world feel more inclusive for people?
Yeah. Yeah. And I do want to talk about your latest book, which came out in May, but I also wanted to ask you a question that a lot of our listeners say, which is, I want to follow my passion, but I have a hard time thinking about it because it's not curing cancer. So how am I doing something good for the world if I'm taking photos or making cupcakes? Like, shouldn't I be, working in a salt mine? Like, people just don't seem to get that you can actually add so much of what human beings need in the world by doing things that you also love to do. And in this conversation, there's just been, it's such a, there's a felt sense knowing as you're speaking that what you're doing is giving oxygen to people, right? But it's not necessarily what people think when you're like, okay, well, does what you do solve a problem? Does what you do add? And you're like, oh my God, I'm going to charge money for it. Like, am I actually, like, who am I to charge for this? What do you think about that? Because you do so much that you love doing, but people also pay for it. And you've made a business doing something that brings people a lot of joy that you also do, you make money from doing, and you like it. And you're not curing COVID, right? You're not, but how do you think people could start to reframe doing things that bring them joy and being paid
Mm.
well to do them if
Do
they
you
don't
feel
know
like
that? Yeah,
people
go ahead.
do you feel like people have a sense of guilt for doing things that aren't
Yeah.
of a I mean, I think everybody has uh, everybody. I can't speak for everyone. I can speak for myself, but all I know is that I truly found something in life that gave me something I didn't have before, and it allowed me to have a freedom. And like in high school, I was so bad at art. I still am truly I'm terrible at art, but I found photography, and I was like, wow, this is the art world, but it's totally different. And I was terrible at sports. I was supposed to be good at athletics. I was supposed to be good at so many other things. And this is sort of where I found my passion, right? And I believe that if you're out there listening and you have a passion, and if that passion is making cupcakes or making photographs or making beautiful cheese boards. I think that for me, I had no idea when I took my leap of faith that I would inspire so many people, and that I would, when I see my work hanging in people's homes and I see how it affects their day-to-day life, it is absolutely the most incredibly rewarding part of my job. And it is not curing cancer, but is it bringing smiles to people? Is it adding this wonderful element of joy to someone's day-to-day life every time they glance over and see that photograph, or see one of our products on their desk, or maybe just have a, a digital photograph, or we have digital Zoom backgrounds. It is so, it's been like extremely rewarding for me. I wish I could cure COVID. um, but in this past year, with all the challenges that we've faced, it was interesting. Our my my brand, my company had never been so. I think we always were having fun, and I have a wonderful staff, incredible team. And we were all trying to ask ourselves a little bit, I think, more about, you know, what do we do? And at the same time, we were realizing that our website was having insane traffic, and people were flocking to the brand because we were offering a sense of escapism, which is really what the brand is all about. It's making every day a getaway. It's making you feel like you're far away. And suddenly, in a time where people were going through really a difficult place, we became this shining light for people, and that was so rewarding. And I mean, I would have never thought in a million billion years that that would be the case. And I think you just never know when you take your leap of faith how it will affect others and what you might actually be doing for other people. So you can't shy away from it for that reason, I think.
Mm, it's so beautiful. Yeah. All of the little moments that added up to how many smiles you gave people and how much people needed it, really needed it.
And
I-
also, people who ask themselves, like, who am I to do this? I mean, who was I to go to a flea market? Like, if I was supposed to go to a gallery and get a gallery to represent me, and, you know, I was breaking the rules. I mean, technically, I was just trying to do something in a way that I could actually literally do it, and somehow make some income from it. So I think if you're asking yourself, if you're doubting yourself, you should just remember the flea market. Like, there's an uncomfortable period in the beginning for a lot of people when you start something. It's not like you're going to feel uncomfortable. Like, I definitely asked myself, who am I to be doing this? Like, I'm standing here in a parking lot in West Hollywood with my artwork clipped onto a 10 by 10 tent that, I'm opening myself up for critique. And I think that that's a normal question, but you have to remember that that's how I found out, like, that's how I got to where I needed to go. That's how I met and talked to the right people. So
So
don't
cool.
don't doubt yourself. Like, you are meant to do things. It's just that there's a period of uncomfortable kind of sort of figuring it out in the beginning. And I think that's the part you have to sort of I'm so grateful for that time, but it was very hard. So it's like you have to know that it's not all going to come out, out of the gate. It's just There's a
Yeah.
period. And you
Yeah.
have to be have courage. Courage is important.
I love the idea of breaking the rules, like you said. We had a guest on, you may know him, Patrick Kane. Do you know him? He designs furniture.
Yes.
He I think also like went to like a Pasadena flea market or something, and then was written about in apartment therapy, and which is like, you know, LA people know it. It's like a blog.
Yes.
And then it was like he started selling these like tree trunks. He would put cement on these tree trunks, and $5,000 later. I was going to ask you, because it's such a fun moment to hear about. I'm curious about it. The very first one you sold, your very first piece. Do you remember how much you sold it for? Do you remember what it was? The very first time you made money from your photography.
I do remember it. Um, it was my very first Sunday in the flea market. At the time, I was selling black and white travel photographs that I had shot when I studied abroad in college. And a young woman came in and she bought, I believe it was, they were $35 each. um, they were $35 each, and she bought three. And she asked if she could have three for, was it three for 100? And I was
Oh
like,
my God.
yeah. I was like, that's great. Like, I forgot we're in a flea market. We can haggle here. That's how it works. And yeah, and they were just like, I think she got a photograph, two or three photographs that I'd taken in London. But yeah, it was amazing. And I thought, I'm a success. I made $100. I did it. Um,
That's
but
amazing, because
I think
that would be
somewhere
thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars now. It's
I
amazing.
know. I think I have a photograph with her somewhere, but yeah, it is always it was a very memorable moment. I think I sold like 15 prints that first Sunday, so
Wow.
it was great.
Yeah.
Um,
One of the things that people ask all the time is, well, why should I do this if there's already other photographers? You know, like there's a million other people podcasting. Why should I start a podcast? There's a million other bakeries and coffee shops. What do you think about that when you obviously were had photographers that you were inspired by, but you didn't let that stop you from adding your perspective? So what do you think when people say that, well, there's already genius people out there, why would people want to buy my photographs?
I mean, I would say, like, after listening to this so far, I mean, I truly had no idea I was going to become an aerial photographer.
Right.
So I think, yes, photography has become so insanely popular, and everyone has a camera on their phone, but it's it's part of the ride. I think you learn as you go, and if you don't get on the ride, you're never going to fully learn it and get there. Everyone has to start somewhere, and it's normal to be inspired by other photographers, for sure. But you never know when you might end up in a helicopter feeling sick to your stomach, totally defeated, and then look up and see a subject matter that will inspire you and take you around the world. So I am proof that you shouldn't shy away from something just because it's a popular field. It's just they're waiting for people like you and your people out there to come and make their mark and take it to the next level. So I feel like I'm still on this ride 100%. Like, we released a series last year where I shot dogs living at the Beverly Hills Hotel, and it's like our most popular series right now. And we have a new project coming out in September called The Dogs of New York City, and it's dogs living at the Plaza Hotel and at the top of 30 Rock and at Central Park and at Bergdorf Goodman. And so suddenly I'm like super into dogs. Like, so don't shy away from something. I didn't know when I started I was going to end up in helicopter. I didn't know I was going to end up shooting dogs. And I don't know what I'm going to be shooting in 5 years. So I think, you've got to go for it and have fun.
I know, right? We miss out on that whole have fun part of our journey. Everyone's so wanting to be practical. And then you get to be 90 and you're like, I forgot to have fun.
Yeah, I
Oh,
think
it's too bad.
so true. It's tough. It's easier said than done, but COVID, I think, has been a time where we all got to kind of stop, we hustle and we hustle and we hustle, and then we kind of all had to stop and look up at where we were in our life and sort of think about what is important to us, and was a it was kind of a stop for a lot of people. So I mean, I think almost everyone I know question their job and where they kind of
Live.
were headed, and maybe thought about a different direction they could be heading. And those moments are important in life. It's too bad it happened over a pandemic, but you know, if there's a silver lining, maybe it's just remembering to sort of stop and check yourself every now and then, make sure you're heading where you want to go. And if you're
Mhm.
not, come and listen to Kathy's podcast for inspiration.
You're so, so generous. And what about your latest book that came out in May? Everyone should have that because probably flipping through those pages would inspire you to maybe come home to yourself and go, where do I really get lit up? What really? So tell us just one quick thing like, what's your favorite part of this book? Or what do you hope that when people have this and pour through it, what are you hoping that they feel?
This book, it is my, I have one, two, three. This is my fourth like proper coffee table book,
Mm-hmm.
but it is for an artist, I think, a dream come true because it's 350 pages. It's about 8 pounds. it's it's an oversized book. It's like, I forget, 11 by 14 inches, but huge book. It's got this beautiful cloth bound,
Mm.
and anyways, it's everything that, like, when I was kind of growing up and I would stumble across these books at like Barnes and Nobles, I'd be like, oh my gosh, flipping through was just unbelievable. And to have been able to make this book and look back on the last decade and all that, it's a retrospective, right? Or they call it a monograph. It is truly a dream come true for me as
Aw.
an artist. I didn't know if starting out, that I would ever get to go from the flea market to have this, I would say, almost like stamp of approval from the publishing world of like,
Mhm.
this is an artist. He's got his name on a book. All my other books are called like Beaches, Escape, Italy. It's not called Gray Malin. Like,
The
you
essential
know,
collection.
it's like, hey, this guy's an actual, he's the real deal photographer. But my intention with the book was to write an opening about how important it is for everyone to be themselves, and authenticity takes you places. And here is where it took me. Here, the first chapter is my black and white early work that I sold in the flea market. I shot a woman in a polka dot dress in LA, New York, and Paris. And then it opens into me experimenting with Polaroids and color and how I shifted into color. And from there into digital photography and all the fun projects. I mean, we talked about a lot, but don't forget, I shot a series of horses wearing wigs in Iceland, and there are uh, a sea of pool rings in Barcelona. And anyways, it's just this great big journey. The book is truly meant to lift your spirits and be a fun source of inspiration, and also a decorative fun object for your home. And I'm thrilled with the book. Amazon is so nuts. The book is retails at $70, but it has been on there on and off for $39. So if you're on Amazon and you see it at like less than $50, I would grab it. It goes from like 39 to $68. I'm like, who's controlling these Amazon prices? But it is it's a dream come true. It's my story of 10 years. And um I hope that anyone who gets to look at it or bring one home is inspired in some way. It definitely will take you on a vacation. That's for sure. It's all 7 continents.
Yeah, you are so inspirational. And gosh, I'm just sitting here thinking how fun it must be to be you and go to Barcelona and go to Iceland and then here you are sitting in Michigan. Like you could be anywhere and you still have something in you that like, appreciates just simple things. And that's really cool.
Oh, I know. I really appreciate you having me on to share my story, and um, I hope that anyone out there who listens can feel inspired in some way. I
Oh,
love
that's already
listening to
happened.
podcasts.
Oh, that's happened 1,000 times already. Everyone's so excited having heard you and full hearts, a lot of full hearts. So tell them where they can follow along your journey and find you and all the things.
There's 3 great ways. The website www.graymalin.com is where the world of Gray Malin exists, and then there's the @GrayMail on Instagram, which is a delightful, joyful um, follow for your feed. And then personally, I'm on Instagram at @GrayMailin personal, and it's just my life behind my camera and being silly. So
And
that's
you're,
where I live. And welcome everybody, and hope you come take a peek.
oh, for sure. We'll put all the links in the show notes and everything else. But this was really, really, really fun. I feel lighter having just gotten to listen to you for an hour. It was really such a treat. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Thank you, Kathy, for having me.
It was so fun.